Welcome all. We're going to have a brief introduction from Jesse here in a second. So just sit tight and we'll get started. If you haven't already, we will be going to set up an OpenAI account. I'll go back over this, but if you're looking for something to do right now and you haven't already, please go to platform.openai.com and make sure you sign in, and you want to be at this screen right here. And you can sign with Gmail. It's free to make an account, but you will need to make an account and sign in. I think we're waiting for.
I'm ready
Yeah,
when
go
you
for
are.
it. Yep.
Cool. Okay. Well, for those who have made it today, guys, thank you so much for being a part of the Alpha group. Um, Bear with us again, as we mentioned when I first asked you to be a part of this Alpha group. Like, you're really going to be helping us in many ways. We're super honored that you would take some time out of your day to come and work with us so early. But this has been a huge team effort. I want to shout out the team, and we're going to be learning alongside you. So for anybody who, if you ever can't make it, don't feel like you have to completely drop out of the Alpha program. Your feedback is super important. We're going to try to record every single session and make sure that all of these things are posted. But yeah, without further ado, Moon, I'll hand it off to you. And thanks so much for doing this.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. Hello, friends. Um, Glad you're here with me today. This is the first week of the Magic Academy courses. We'll be covering everything from the very basics. The people here and who are going to watch this and who are going to go through this, some of them are very advanced, and some of them have never written a text prompt before and are just getting started. So we're going to try and move quickly, but we are also going to start from the very beginning. We will be covering some. Today will basically be about half magic and half just even fundamentals, prompt engineering, kind of core concepts, just sort of building that foundation. So I've added the syllabus for this week, and we'll be adding these every week to our Academy repo on OneYearCom. If you're not comfortable with GitHub, I understand. One quick way to get this file is to go here, and I'll send you the link. And if you click on code, you can download the zip file. And that basically contains all of the files. But really, you don't actually have to download it. You can click through, and you can see this overview.md. You click on that, and you'll see that all of the information is here. It's just a fancy Google Docs. I recommend getting comfortable with Git. It's a very powerful tool. It's a way for a lot of us to share our ideas and code. And so even if you're not super comfortable, at least kind of feeling good with this interface is good. And that's kind of the big part of why I chose to kind of bring you into the tools I use every day, at least. So here you go. If you need to get the files, you can get clone. You can just look here. You can download it. So we have to set up two things. The first thing is we should probably set up, if you're here in the Alpha program, you probably have whitelist access to the cloud, the Magic Cloud. Let me pull that up really quick. And that is at cloud.magicml.com. It'll take a second to load because we're just rebuilding it. When you go there, you will be asked for your email. This is the email address that you have given us that we've whitelisted. In the future, this will be more open, but you are on a special list. So make sure you use that email. And when you get in, you should be at a screen like this. Let me just let me sign out so that you guys can see what I'll see what you guys see. This should be what the screen you see. I will log in with MagicML, and that will send me a link. That link is going to my email, which I'll check on my other screen. And if I click on that link, it should bring me to something like this. You probably don't have a project yet, and you probably see something like this. This is fine. This is our project template view. We are adding a whole bunch of different project templates that you'll be able to kind of start from, which will save a lot of time. But for now, we have one empty project template, and that is what we'll be starting with. I will be just naming this there. But we're going to come back to this. I just want to make sure that everybody takes a little second, gets logged in, doesn't fall behind. And we have a couple other chores we got to do. So I'll give you guys a second to get to our project screen. Great. So one of the members of the audience is showing that they actually have a whole bunch of templates in their screen because that might be, oh, that's interesting. It might be a different build than what I have. But it doesn't really matter. If you're seeing many projects in here, that's okay. Just go. You'll need to just do the same thing. Add a project name and then just go through and create project. Continue going. If you are struggling with being whitelisted, one of the members of the team is checking the chat. Just post in your chat, and Ryan or somebody else will help you out. So while that's going, we'll come back to this because a couple of people are going to need some help getting here. We're going to visit our other website that we need to get some access to. Now, Magick is not dependent on OpenAI. We actually serve OpenAI as a provider through a plugin, through our OpenAI plugin. However, OpenAI is by far the best AI completion we can get right now. It's the one people are most familiar with. And it is probably, the best range of cost-effective as well as just, great completions. So we do support ChatGPT, GPT-4, GPT-3, everything else. And we will be focusing on that. So in future versions of Magick, we'll probably just handle all of this for you. But for now, you can use Magick entirely for free by using your OpenAI key. So we're going to go through logging in and getting an OpenAI key. First, you have to have an OpenAI account. Now, if you have a ChatGPT account, that's great, or a Dolly account, that's great, but they're actually separate accounts. You're going to need an account for platform.openai.com. Similarly, I will come here. You can see I am on the login screen. I just log in with Google. It's free to make an account. If you have any problems, there might be some countries that this isn't supported, let us know. But you should just be able to make an account and get some free credit and get started. And once I'm logged in here, well, there's a few different places we'll revisit. I can go in, for example, into some examples and the playground and all of that. So I just want to make sure that everybody is caught up. You have two things, right? You have an OpenAI key, and you have logged in successfully to the Magick Cloud. While you're doing that, I'm just going to reset my screens over here on the side. And we'll be moving on to the next part soon. So the place that this is going to start is going to be in the OpenAI sandbox. We have our own playground coming that looks quite similar to this, but we still kind of, usually go to the source. OpenAI has made a great playground, which lets us access all of their, different models and everything. And I would love to, I'd love to just jump into Magick and start. But I think that there's really some sort of preliminary concepts that we really need to cover and understand in order to really appreciate why Magick is even awesome. Why did we come to this kind of crazy tool? And we really all started here. We started in this playground, just creating completions. So I'm going to go over a few of the different parts of how to create a completion and what these values do. And we're going to use some of these values, which are also exposed in Magick, the exact same values, to create a prompt later. But I'd like to start just by getting everybody kind of acclimated to the sandbox. Even a lot of people who are into this stuff have never really gotten deep into this playground or found it to be useful. And I kind of want to show how I use it. And when I'm building Magick spells, I also have this open and I'm testing because there's a lot of optimization can happen in this window. So the OpenAI sandbox, the way you get to it is you click on the playground, or they call it the playground, but it's the same kind of idea. I have also, I'm going to go over some of the different, what these parameters are, but I've also asked ChatGPT to make a really nice list of it. Here we go. I'm going to pull this over here. I actually asked GPT 3.5 about the parameters of GPT 3.5. However, all of the parameters for all of the 3 and 4 models are the same. And I kind of came down and got a really nice description here. You could probably clean it up with some bolding, but I'm going to go over it myself. However, if you'd like, you can go into the week 1 view and you can see there's a parameters MD. And this does have, talks about what parameters like temperature, top P, frequency penalty, what they do. And also, if you're not sure, just ask ChatGPT yourself. The crucial thing here is that if AI is really well trained on AI, and oftentimes I can give you the knowledge, but if I can show you how to find the knowledge yourself over and over again, that might be more valuable. And one of the biggest things that I've learned is leveraging AI to learn about AI. So if if I wanted to make a completion and say, hey, explain what top P is, what this little value over here is, I might just do that in here. But I will give you a little overview, human to human first. So there are two kinds of primary models that we use in 2023 to now. In 2022, there was kind of one, which was the text completion. And you see there's complete. And then they added a couple of cool ones like insert. So instead of completing, let's say let's make a completion. I would say the quick brown fox, and then I press submit, and it completes. It actually adds some more stuff. It's let me just get rid of these little inject things. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, right? I don't know if you've ever heard that. It was like an old typing test thing. But it's seen the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog so many times that it's the only thing it could ever possibly complete to. The quick brown fox, if I do it again, jumps over the lazy dog. So this is a completion. The way that most AI is set up is we give it context. The context is the quick brown fox. This is context. Here is something to start with. This is your context. And then we get in response a completion. This is your completion. Now, I don't want it to go to another line. I want it to just end at the end. So I'm going to add a stop sequence. And I'll go over these parameters, but just really quickly, we'll add that new line there. That didn't work. It probably wants a return. Yeah, it wants a return. So if I type in the quick brown fox, jumps over the lazy dog. Okay, great. So what I did right there was I added a stop sequence. I said, yeah, you're just going to keep completing forever, but I actually don't want you to. I want you to stop after if you're going to press return. That way now it's got a nice clean kind of completion, right? So this part, the quick brown fox, that's called context. What is the input that we're giving to the model? And then it's going to respond by predicting the next tokens, which are the completion, context completion. So this is how we did AI for, I don't know, 2 years. We provide the context. We create a really rich context. We could pull some information from databases and, get something from Wikipedia and then write this batch of context. I could go to Wikipedia, right? And I could just go grab, imagine that I'm a computer and I'm doing this dynamically. I'm not just doing it by hand. But I could go grab John C. Young. I could grab this and I could dynamically inject all of this information, whatever it is. And then, response, I'd get something back. Didn't predict very much. The Reverend John C. Young, I could say, I don't know, maybe we'll do write a Wikipedia article. Just something, whatever. I go get some information. I stick it in here and I bring it back. It's so boring. Give me a good answer. There you go. And you can see I just said the Reverend Dr. John C. Young, and bam, it just starts completing his Wikipedia article because he was also trained on that. So I gave it some context, which could have been, some blah, 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 big amount of information I found somewhere else. And then I got a really long completion back. And this is the essence of how we've been doing prompt engineering in text for a while. So let's talk about what these parameters are. I think these are pretty, well, actually, before we talk about the parameters, we'll talk about the other mode. In this year, we got ChatGPT, and that actually added a new mode to OpenAI, but it's also a different paradigm for how we create these completions. Instead of having context completion, we have a chat. We have this thing here called a system directive, and this tells the assistant what to be, and then we have a chat. And so now I could say, you are an expert AI researcher who works at OpenAI, attempting to explain the parameters of the model to a layman, right? That's the directive. And then I could say, what is temperature? And you can see this is ChatGPT. This is the ChatGPT model, GPT 3.5 Turbo. This is the system directive. They have some sort of crazy one that's just like trying to keep you from prompt injecting, and doing all those crazy jailbreaks you see. But then the rest of it is a chat back and forth. What's also cool is I can actually go and I can edit the assistant chat. I can edit the user chat. And so I can send this dynamically every time and get, new completions. So I can set up like a whole long conversation history, and then I can, get the next part. And in that way, the assistant kind of acts with short-term memory. So the main two completion types we use are completion mode, or text completion, and chat completion. There are others. There's insert and edit, but they're sort of they're more advanced. You can do them on your own. They're not super intuitive for the kinds of pipeline flows we use. They can be, and you certainly have access to them. But I really recommend starting with those kinds of two, because it's a very easy model to get a lot of value from. So let's talk about the parameters. Now, when I go to chat, also, by the way, if you have GPT-4 access, I don't on this account, you can access it here it's a chat model. So GPT-4 and 3.5 are both chat models. But they both have temperature, maximum length, top P, frequency penalty, and presence penalty. Both models do, right? Same. Temperature, maximum length, top P. So temperature. The way the temperature works is a temperature of 0 is essentially considered fully deterministic, because it counts the full weight of every next token. So if I type count from 1 to 10, 1, 2, well, what do you think is going to come next? 3, of course. I mean, the likelihood that anything outside of 3 could have come is extremely low, right? It just makes absolutely no sense. And that probability is calculated in full. It's actually not, because I have a temperature of 0.7. But let's say I had a temperature of 0, right? There's absolutely no way, it is totally deterministic, that I will get anything other than 3, because it is like a 95% likelihood that that's the next thing that comes up. However, if I turn my temperature to 1, what it does is it compresses the probabilities so that they're all the same. I mean, like every word could have the same probability. Now, it's possible it still comes up with 3. I could be wrong, whatever, of course. But there is a possibility also that it doesn't. I think in this case it probably will, but the idea of the temperature is that everything is likely. Let's give a better example. I'm thinking of a random number, right? Between 1 and 100. Let's see what happens. 87. Okay, cool. 87. And what happens if I do it again? 87 again. Oh, cool. Now, as I turn the temperature up, every other random number becomes more likely, just like 87. It's really interesting that 87 is the number it chose. And if I do it again, well, it's 53. And as I believe that because it's deterministic, well, let's see. If I do it again, no, 76, right? Now it's totally non-deterministic. So this temperature is how we control randomness, and it's also how we control creativity. Because if it's always going to give you the same response, if I say hello, and it always says whatever its response is, it has no likelihood of giving any other response, and it's not creative. So we consider this temperature control as like a hyperparameter around creativity. The problem with creativity is, if you've ever met someone who's really creative, sometimes they struggle to be really grounded. They don't necessarily tell the truth. I mean, they mean to, but they might, make up a little extra embellishments, here and there. And so one of the risks that we have in our models is hallucination, or just completely saying the wrong thing, or missing the right number, or, those kinds of things. And that sometimes tends to happen when we have too high a temperature. However, we also get much more creative stories out of that. So, a temperature of 0.5 or something, whatever, in the middle, that might be great for you. If you want a really zany character who's willing to say anything, go anywhere, you might have a high temperature. If you want a data processing extraction pipeline thing, maybe your temperature is like 0. So that's kind of the first big parameter that we control things with. The next parameter is top P. So there's a bunch of, let's say I have numbers 1 through 100, and it can randomly choose any of those numbers, right? If I say submit, it's 87 because I have a temperature of 0. Now, what top P does, it says, of all of the possible options, give me the ones that are the most likely. Now, this is a softmax function. There's a lot of math behind it. Why it decides on one versus the other, or like, it's a little complicated basically, but it all comes down to a number between 0 and 1. And what this says is, if it's 0, or let's say 0.1, only give me the very most likely possibilities, and then out of those possibilities, you'll determine the next prediction. If the top P is 1, it says, of all of the likely possibilities, give me the next prediction. And that basically says I'm not going to filter anything out. However, if you did want to have a more control over the weighting of the options, which might be like a very deterministic output, you might lower this. Again, if you want a more creative output, you would probably increase it. So generally, when you're starting out, a good way to think about it is creativity is highly tied to temperature and top P, right? Temperature is how likely it is to randomly select one of the options. Top P is how much is it going to filter out the things that are unlikely before performing that selection. Is that, I hope this isn't too complicated. But if it is, I highly recommend that you go to ChatGPT and you ask about these things. It really is. Like, I literally learned a lot doing that myself. So maximum length says, hey, just don't make something that's too long, right? Maximum length is I might want to just cap it and say I only want 5 tokens back or 5 words back or something. That's great. It will just make sure that happens and it will stop at that point. So this isn't really controlling any quality of the output. It's just like how long the output is. The stop sequence is, well, if I see something in the sequence that I'm generating, stop generating. And that could be like end. It could be a quote. It could be a return statement, like a new line, right? It could be a lot of things. And you want to make sure that your stop sequences are set up right so that you don't accidentally not get information back or stop it or it goes on too long. But this is also something you only see in the completion. This is not a chat completion parameter. Now you have frequency penalty and presence penalty. So these roughly at a high level correspond to repetition and how we manage repetition. Sometimes the model can repeat forever. For example, I could do something like, I am like this, right? And now instead of it coming with like 87, it would probably just come up with some crazy repetition. I have to get rid of this stop sequence. Oh, no, it's still working. Curious. I wonder if I mess with the settings, I don't know. But sometimes you'll get into really bad repetitive situations. This is great. It's actually working. Where it just starts like spamming out something. And you might want to control that with frequency and say, well, if it's already created those tokens, then give it less likelihood to create those tokens again, right? So you can see that there's a little tooltip. So if it already exists within our context and the tokens that the model is generating, then start to decrease the likelihood. And that means it will start to maybe change topics or kind of move away from that thing if it's been repeating itself too long, and then switch back out to something else. So if you're having a repetitive completion, this is a great way to create more to get out of that. But it's also a really useful way to create more creativity. An agent that says, "Oh yeah, great. Well, so now tell me about your family." It's like it's now being incentivized or pushed in the direction of new topics. And presence penalty also works with this. So generally they would say that frequency penalty relates specifically to the words being generated, individual tokens or words, and that presence penalty tends to be more the topic or concept. And so if you want an agent that says changes concepts conversationally, changes topics, you might increase your presence penalty. So these ones are a little bit more, I don't know, you have to kind of play with. I tend to set these at 0 and then use them when I need them if I'm having issues. But you can use them as you please. Definitely experiment. And the last one is best of. And best of is saying, okay, well, I could have 5 completions, but try and give me the one you think is the best. The way that OpenAI's stuff, these transformers work is that they are going in one direction. They're just predicting the next token, right? So I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100, and it's like, what's the next token? 1. Okay, and that's it. And then from there, what's the next token? Return. Okay, and so it doesn't know until the end really how to calculate a metric for which one of those would be the best, because it's generating token by token. And if you have like 5 of them, it can rank them and then give you the best completion of those. So if you have something that is really mission critical and it works 95% of the time, but it would work like 100% of the time if you got the best of 3 result, you might want to use that sort of best of parameter. I would say, though, that we tend to leave this at 1, especially in our kind of prompt pipelining, because we have so much going on that, we need a certain level of determinism, and that can really rack up cost, right? Because you're having to run the thing, for best of 3, you're running it 3x times. You get some cost savings in the context, but not a lot. Injection of start text and end text, that's just like if you wanted to do like a Q&A or something. I could say like, inject start text is human. And then I could, when I do this thing and I press submit, it injects human, it starts with human. Or I could start with like a return, I press submit. And you can see it starts with like human. And then restart text. This is new. I've never used this before. But I assume that once you've generated it, it's going to append it. Yeah, something like that. It's probably like so you could have human. I think what you would do is then you'd have like AI, right? AI. And so then I'd say like submit human, comes up with an answer, and then the AI starts again. And then I could submit. You can see it. It's a way to like kind of create this chat completion. And I think once they saw this and how awkward it was, they were like, we should just make a chat model. So this is the text completion playground. All of these settings are the same for chat, but we should just try chat really quick. You can see temperature, maximum length, top P, and these. There's no end token. It just has its own training on when to end. I highly suggest going through and using this sandbox. I think there's one other thing I should probably show you. You can show probabilities, and I'll do the full spectrum of probabilities. And what this does is it actually shows me the log prob of a token. Oh, and we should probably get into that next. What is a token? But you can see that 42 had a 2% chance of getting rolled. So it was actually not that probable, but it did choose that one. And whenever you use like the quick brown fox, right? Back to that one. I create one of these. Oh, let me get rid of my objections. You can see that jumps was 72% likely to be the one it predicted. So it's predicting every token after the next one, and its prediction is based on the tokens before it. So if you said jumps 72%, the next token has a 99% chance of being over, right? And this is really useful for some other stuff. Like if I have a lot of things in there that are highly predicted, I could probably prune a lot of that because it might just be additional stuff I don't even need. Like let's say I just go and I grab this. I totally pasted the wrong part. And I'd say something, blah, 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 continue. And it'll show you the likelihood of each of those tokens as it predicted them. And sometimes I could be like, well, there's like Presbyterian Church in here a lot. I wonder, I could probably just like get rid of some of the, references to that and kind of make this prompt smaller. Anyways, I use this kind of knowledge sort of artistically to craft prompts by reducing things that are super likely to appear many times, and then sort of compressing my prompt down. So that's, let's see. I'm going to show you a couple more things. Let me just go back to my syllabus. We talk a lot about tokens. And pull this over here. And it's not always clear to people what a token is. If you're from Web3, I think you have a good idea of what a token is. But this is a different kind of token. I have a link to the tokenizer. So I've posted this in the syllabus. It's at platform.openai.com/tokenizer. But let's talk about tokens. A computer doesn't really understand words. The model doesn't know words. It knows numbers. And it has to create these kinds of complex vectors from these numbers. So we have to have a way to get words to become numbers. The problem is if we give every single word, variation of a word, possible weird thing in vernacular, possible combination of like emojis, we get way too many words and different things, like different ideas. And each of those little like ideas or words or bits of text, that's a token, right? Or it could be. So what we've done is we decided, okay, let's split those into the most common ones. And for every other one, we'll just use like a single, if it's an A, we'll just use an A. Or if it's like an apostrophe, we'll use an apostrophe. But for like Paris could probably be a token. So we break the words up into tokens, and then we see kind of how it handles that. So maybe I'll just copy this text in here so you can see what I mean. Just copied some text into the tokenizer, and you can see how it broke up the tokenizer. Broke up the paragraph with the tokenizer into the tokens. You can see the is a token, space G capital is a token, capital PT is a token, space family is a token. All of these are different tokens, right? Commas are tokens. And if I click on token IDs, it'll show me the vector. So this is like what the actual model sees. It doesn't know anything about, letters. It just knows these kinds of numbers. And these numbers are corresponding to these tokens. And this is called BPE encoding. I want to say it's, is it binary pair encoding? I forget. I should remember. But the idea is that we are associating each of these words with a number. But I want to say byte pair encoding. And the reason it's a byte pair is because we've taken this complex word and we've turned it basically into a byte, right? Like it is one of the numbers that's indexable within, whatever the size of our index is. So we have, a bunch of different tokens. I forget how many there are. It's more than 50,000. And those are what are used to then create predictions. So when we talk about tokens are really important for cost. OpenAI charges per token. The size of your context window going in and the size of the generation coming out are both included in that cost. And you should just be aware that a lot of what we're trying to do is optimize to get the most value out of the least tokens. And as a general heuristic, you can see here that about 100 tokens equals about 75 words. So if you're looking and you say, oh, I have 1,000 words, you can guess that is what 100 130 tokens or whatever for I don't know. I did the math wrong. But it's you can do the math here and just be like it's 75 divided by 100, whatever, 1.25 or something. Cool. Let's see what's next. Okay. So I want to talk about one other kind of big concept in relation to prompts, which is we have this idea of a multi-shot or a few shot and a single shot. So a single shot is I am guessing a number between 1 and 10. Or let's just say, no, let's do a better one. Let's do Moon CTO Magic ML, right? And we'll say 28 Hogwarts Lane, right? Blah, blah, San Francisco. I don't even like Hogwarts. I don't even really care about Harry Potter, but it just seemed like the thing. Yeah, I've got like my information. This came from somewhere, and I could say extract the name of the person from the above information. And this is called a single shot, right? I'm performing a task. I want to do something. You can see it came back with Moon. Hey, pretty good. That's really great. But what happens when it doesn't work on the first time? Because it doesn't know what you're trying to do. Well, you might have to give it, I don't know, like data, chief robot, right? Starship, blah, 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 Earth. Okay. And then you might say, well, and I'd give it the exact same instruction, extract name and blah, blah, blah. And I could say data, right? And now this is called a multi-shot. I've given it an example of the data, an instruction, and an example of the correct response. And so it's meta learned that it wants this. And when I give it another completion or example, it will ideally give me back a response that's really good. Now, I'm using a great model. DaVinci is great. But if we use something cheap like Ada, which is like, 100th the cost or something, the likelihood that it gives me back the right information is dramatically lower. And so if I do a single shot, totally wrong. John, who's John, right? So if I give it this multi-shot, it's probably still going to be bad because it's great. It's a bad model, but I'll try a better one. We'll see what happens. Okay, well that didn't do what I was hoping it would do. Let's try. Ada's just so bad. Let's try like Curie, which is one of the cheaper models. And you can see it came back with Moon. Now, if I had not had the shot there, it might be smart enough. It's a pretty smart model. But you can know, Catherine Moon, who's that? So this way of setting up the multi-shot is critical for having the model meta learn the task that you want, especially when the task that you want is not super straightforward. It's not just like, give me a list of cool names. It's like, from this, get me that. So I highly recommend using this multi-shot. And we use the word multi-shot, few shot, and prompt somewhat interchangeably inside of Magick and outside, because so much of what we do with prompting does involve these kinds of shots and setups and ways of feeding in a long context and getting out something based on that. Cool. So I've covered almost everything in part one. I have a couple other things I should look at. One thing you're probably wondering is, okay, cool. Text completion is great. What about, I'm a prompt engineer, but I do images. I think that's something that a lot of people today are kind of, using Stable Diffusion and these things. And so, I'll bring up Dolly. I don't love Dolly. Of the things, I think, Midjourney is great. Obviously, the new Stable Diffusion and Dream Studio stuff is amazing. Dolly is okay, and it's quite expensive, but it's a great place to learn how to make stuff, and they do have some really consistent image style. So I could, click and generate, and it's actually doing basically the same thing. It's taking in some text, it's converting it into tokens, and then it's using that as a guide to generate an image. The way it generates the image is very complex. This is actually not a Stable Diffusion model. It's a slightly different, I believe it's a different latent diffusion model, but conceptually it's very, very similar to Stable Diffusion. And you're basically doing the same thing, but instead of text to text, you're doing text to image, right? So if you haven't ever played with this, you can go to labs.openai.com and you can generate with Dolly. But I'd also really recommend checking out Midjourney. And then the last thing for this is, let's see, let me go back to my notes. Where'd it go? Totally lost it. Seem to have lost my there we go, my syllabus. So I'll just load it up again. So I have one other link for you, which I've put in to the syllabus on the GitHub, which is this Learn Prompting website. This is great. This is a community of people who are learning prompting. And if you go here, you can see there's a lot of information on everything from basics to very advanced prompts, hacking, tooling, other alternatives for developing prompts, different environments, just everything. I highly recommend looking through the basic applications. There's a lot of great prompting here. And obviously going through the basics. We've covered a lot of this, LLM settings and these things, but there's certainly a lot more that you could get deep into. And if you're looking for a place to get into it, this is a great place to start. So with that, we're going to start in part two, which is Magick, but I'd like to take just like a minute. If there's any questions, or anybody needs a second to catch up, the thing that I'd like to, if you haven't already done, is I'd like you to go to the cloud and log in at cloud.magicml.com, and we'll get started in just a minute. So, or how about this? We're going to go to cloud.magicml.com, make sure you're all logged in, and then we're going to take 2 minutes so that everybody can get here to this to the point where they're logged in. I'm trying to log out so I can log back in. I'll have to figure that out. Cool. So let's resume in 2 minutes. And if you have any questions, please, now's the time. Feel free to post them in the chat. I can answer anything related to prompting before we move into Magick. I'm going to grab a drink of water, and then we're going to start again. Okay, we're back. And we are ready to start with the actual kind of Magick part. I think that, I'd love to give an overview of Magick to start, but I felt like there's a lot of terminology that we're going to discuss that really relies on us having a clear picture of what a prompt is and what a token is. Everything after that is going to be moving into sort of the data flow side and understanding how things flow. And mostly what is flowing is tokens. So now that we've gotten kind of the boring starter stuff out of the way, we're going to start talking about Magick, what it is, why we use it, why would we want to go this direction and build on top of this and not just like sit in the sandbox all day. So that being said, let's get started. I'm going to send the Magick link to myself and log in. And I will just do that over here in the background. Okay, and I have logged in. It took me to my dashboard, and here I am in the cloud. We're just starting with the cloud. It's still very slim. We have a lot of things coming here, new templates, a marketplace. Right now, it's just a place to manage our projects. If I make let's say I have, I don't know, I'll make a new project. If you don't have any projects, you'll probably see this new project screen. I have a couple of projects, so I kind of have to click on it. I'm going to say week 1. That's the name of this project. I'll create that. And that will bring me into the editor. I don't have any recent spells yet. I'm actually going to create a spell. Now, again, we have a lot of templates that are coming, but right now we just have these 2 templates. By next week, we will have the Discord and Twitter templates, or we'll be back here available for you to start with. But for now, we're just going to start with something very, very simple. Let's start a template. And I will say, I don't know, week 1, spell 1. Yeah. Cool. So we're going to get into what each of these does in just a second. But I want to give you a quick overview of the editor. First, we have a menu over here on the left. And you can expand and collapse that so you can see what the different areas of the menu are. And we're in the spells view. The spells view is the kind of main IDE and editor for individual spells. A spell is a graph. It's more than a graph. It contains some metadata, some information about the variables, but it's our way in Magick of describing the work that happens, right? You have an input, some stuff happens, and then you have an output. And pretty much everything kind of, even looping complex, agentic behavior, at some point has some sort of function that is input, does stuff, output. And we can combine these together like Lego blocks to create enormous complexity. So let's see. We'll start with the inspector. If I click on any of these, well, let's start maybe even simpler than that. This is a node, right? I can create a node by right-clicking and dropping a node. Let's say I start with an input node. A node is a bundle of code that you don't have to worry about. It does a bunch of stuff. It gives you an input. It processes your input into an output. It sends an output. Maybe it recalls something from a database. It is pre-programmed Lego block-like functionality, which you can use to take something and process it or do whatever you want to it. I mean, these are the building blocks of graphs. And a lot of this, this is, if you've never seen this before, nodes are very popular in certain fields, especially VFX and game engines now, especially with Unreal Engine blueprints. A lot of apps like Nuke use nodes to kind of describe visual flow for compositing. It's a popular paradigm. A lot of programmers feel like, well, why don't I just program this? And if you're making something simple, that might be what you want to do. If you're a programmer, it might be easier for you to do what you know. But the goal here is not to replace programming. The goal here is really to separate the programming from the flow of your data and app so that, well, if you're a programmer, you can just make new nodes and then, reuse them later. And if you're not a programmer, you just don't have to worry about code at all. You only have to worry about that other side of your app of, I have some input, I want to do something to it, and I want to send some input, some output. So, and the node editor is a way, even, this is not just for beginners. This is something that I think we came to as advanced users, really wanting to see from a high level, like all of the things happening in our very complex AI systems. And that once I had been building these kinds of projects, which were, 50,000 lines of code, I couldn't keep all of it in my head. I couldn't see the flow. I didn't have a great way to test somewhere in the middle of the process. And I really realized that we needed something like this. And that's actually a lot of how I came to this project. Was not from, oh, cool, node editor, but oh my God, I need this so bad. I don't know what's going on in my programs anymore. So takeaway from this is nodes allow us to view, to manage how data flows. They are made of code, but there is not coding happening in the node view, unless you were to say add a code node, like a JavaScript node. And with the JavaScript node, you could actually go in and write code. But so you can write code if you want to. We're not going to do that today. It's not expected. If you did want to write code, you can write Python and JavaScript as you want. We also have some cool things like AI auto completion, so you can describe the code you want, and it will try and generate it for you. We're not going to get too deep into that. We're going to start with just a few of the most basic nodes today, though. So after nodes, we have these things called connections. And a connection, well, let's say I just have some other node here. Connection is when I drag a connection from one thing to the next, right? That is a connection. Now these two nodes are connected. The trigger what the trigger sends is a message to start running, like start doing stuff, do whatever you do, whatever your node is. If you're an echo node, you're going to echo whatever came in back out. Okay, cool, do it. Now's the time. So we control what we call execution flow of one thing happening, then another thing happening by wiring up the triggers using connections. Sometimes we call them wires, connections, whatever. But basically, the spell graph is made up of nodes wired together by connections. This is general mathematical terminology. It's borrowed from graph theory. If you like, all graphs have nodes and connections, or nodes and edges, or vertices and edges, or whatever the two are. That is the same kinds of things, same paradigm that we're doing here. So some of the nodes also give us some really interesting access to other kind of parts of the window. For example, if I create a text template, I have a text editor here, and I can type in whatever I want. I have an inspector on the left, and different nodes will have different options that I can add. For example, if I wanted to add an input to the text template, I can go over here, and you'll see that that modifies the node. So we have a text editor here by default. We have an inspector here by default. And then if I want to try my graph, we have what's called the playtest window down here. And the playtest window, when I say testing, you can see it runs, it responds, the agent responds with the response. This is an echo script, so it's just echoing whatever I said back to me. And that's how I kind of basically test it. We'll get into what these individual nodes do in just a second, but I do want to cover some of these other windows first. The console here will show you the outputs. This is kind of, developer mode, but if you're not sure what's going on or why there's an error, this can often be very helpful for showing what's going on. And there's a new push coming very soon, which will let you then preview the inputs and outputs of each of the nodes as their inputs are updated. So after spells, we have agents. So you've created a spell that does something, and you want that spell to run forever. Every time somebody messages the bot on Discord, you want it to do something. So the agent is the actual object that stays alive, sticks around, and runs. It runs Discord or Twitter. It's like a server. It's an application that's running, waiting for this input. And whenever it receives the input, it will respond by running the spell and then sending the output. So if you want an application, a full Magick app, or really any kind of AI application, is going to be a combination of graphs as well as the agents to run the graphs. So we have our spell view. We create this week 1 spell 1 spell. And then in the agents, I would say, okay, I'll have a new agent. I set the spell I want it to run. In this case, the week 1 spell 1. Now it's called the root spell. What's cool about our graphs is that you can actually embed graphs within graphs within graphs within graphs. And you can get enormous emergent complexity. And it also allows you to share that complexity with each other. Because I could work on memory, and you could work on judgment. And then I could share my memory graph. You could share your judgment graph. And now we're building some kind of crazy pseudo AGI system where we're each just focusing on our own graphs. But the agent needs an insertion point. It needs like the root where when information comes in, this is the graph to consult, and that's the root spell. Beyond that, we have some secrets that get passed in, and then we have some connectors. We have a few connectors here that are not enabled right now, but the main 3 that are enabled in the alpha will be Discord, Twitter, and a REST API. You can connect it to Discord and make a chatbot. You can connect it to Twitter, and it can message and respond based on streams. So if somebody messages the bot or posts uses a hashtag or a word or something, and you can also create a REST API, which lets you deploy a front end and use Magick as your entire backend. We'll get into that later. That's all advanced. That's kind of the agent window. Documents we're not going to cover documents because it's currently alpha. That's a new feature for us. It will be searchable and indexable. It looks like, come on. It looks like our documents, events, and requests are not working right now. That's fine. A couple of new features which we have, which will probably, we're developing these, and they are enabled but not officially supported yet. We have a full ChatGPT style window where you can use and access any of your spells. Basically, you have ChatGPT, but your own custom spells. And we also have a full avatar window. There should be an avatar here. There should be a character here. This is being worked on right now. There you go. Where you'll be able to drag and drop your own VRM characters into here and give them personality and converse with them. Same, you'll be able to select the spell, or This is the next thing coming. So 3D avatar chat, 2D chat GPT style chat, spells, agents. Now documents, events, and requests, I think they're just not enabled, right? They're probably just not showing in the cloud right now. I'll talk to the team about that. Events are basically any kind of thing that happens and as our memory. We're going to be using events next week. Documents are knowledge bases that we want to store and search. So we have a whole vector search kind of element. We're probably going to cover this in week 3. And documents would be like you want to put your entire documentation for your app into a Magick agent, and you want to be able to search that. That's what the documents and document store function is for. Requests show us the cost and statistics for every AI API call we make, so that we can calculate review cost, create statistics, for cost analysis and everything else. So how much does this graph cost me to run? How many people are running it? How often does it run? That's all stuff that we're getting and synthesizing out of our request view. But the real meat and potatoes of like what we're going to be focusing on today and for a while are spells and agents. I spend 95% of my time in these 2 windows when I'm developing. So let me go back to my syllabus. So we're going to make a graph from scratch. Well, how are we doing on time? We're almost out of time, but I do think we'll have this will probably be about 15 more minutes to get through this part. I would love to set up the Discord bot and run everybody through that. I don't think we're going to have time in the time that we promised, but I will be staying late for a part 3 and going over that if you'd like to stay. And we will set up the Discord bot, like just the real nuts and bolts of Discord developer portal, all that stuff. So there will be a part 3 that we'll go over, but you don't have to visit that, and we will revisit that also in the next week.
And just as a point out, this is being recorded. Everybody will have access to the recordings to go over things again afterwards. So if you do leave, you'll get a recording. You can always go back over it yourself.
Yeah. For part 3, we'll definitely revisit in the next week too. So there won't be any lost material. But definitely we should get through some of these graphs and understand what some of these nodes do. So let's just make a really, really simple graph. And I'm going to make a blank one. And we're going to call it simple graph. Let's do week 1, just to have some consistency. Now, most of the time, you're probably going to be starting from like a prefab, like existing spell or template. We'll be providing templates. But you might just want to build from scratch, especially if you're doing something that's like a sub task. Like I just want to do one thing, and I want to do that one thing well. So we're going to make a very basic graph. The very basic graph we want to start with is the hello world. You downloaded Magick, or you sign up for the cloud, and you just want to test that this thing even works at all. So you have an input, you have an output. You need some kind of work between here. You could wire them together, but you're not going to get a whole lot of usefulness. You probably want something in the middle. So the first thing we have to understand is this input. The input is actually carrying a lot of information. Out of this input is not just what I type in here, blah, but a whole bunch of data. If this input was coming from Discord, and let's say I'll switch it to Discord just because that's the direction we're going. Discord text. Well, I need to know what the user said, but I also need to know what user said it. I want to know what server it came from. I want to know, ideally, a timestamp. I could think of a lot of different data that I want to maybe use in the future in my graphs. So the input that's coming out of here, this output, is actually very complex. And this blue output represents an event output. The event data, I can actually view what is being sent through my playtest. There is a data button here. It's a little messy. We're going to make this a little nicer with some presets, but for now you can see there's just like a data object. And that data object contains all of the information that we are sending to the input. So I wish we could just send like hello world, but even though we're in this playtest, we still need to pass in a whole lot of detailed information for the graph to function the way that it's supposed to. And so when we send I don't know, hello world, it's actually sending all of this information here. Plus, it's adding in a field like content. I'm sorry if this looks complex to you. This is data, right? This is called a JSON object, but just imagine it's some data. And the way it's organized is that there's a key and there's a value. There's a sender, and then the sender is user. The content is hello world. The observer is assistant. These are really boring values: type, client, channel, in the playtest window. But in Discord, that might be like type is DM, or type is I guess just feed. I think it's feed. And then client would be Discord. Channel would be the server. Channel type. I don't even remember. It depends. I think that would be that would be if it's text or audio or whatever that is. The entities are the users that are actually involved in this conversation, so we can track multi-user conversations, and then we just have our project ID. So that's the data that gets sent to the input. We don't really need all or even any of that data. The only thing we need is this content, and this content isn't actually here. It's added when I press send. So I say hello world, press send, and it sends this whole content object with this, this whole or event object with that content in there. So I just need to get the content. I want to get hello world, and I want to just repeat that back to me. Okay, well, what if we just wire these up? What would happen? Testing. I don't think it's going to work. Also, I have to refresh. Weird thing. Sorry. Let me try that one more time. We'll just wire them together. What's going on?
The bug that you fixed for...
No, don't worry. No, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. So now it's saved. All right, testing. Well, it actually doesn't like that. It needs some amount of work. It's like, I don't know, you're giving me like all this stuff, man. Can we do something in the middle? Okay, sure. You can see it output that whole complex object, but it didn't really like it. So we're going to do, I don't know, we're going to have to get some information out of this event. There's two ways to do this. One way is with the, this isn't the newest version yet. Well, we have a new node called destructure, and we've actually renamed it so we can get values from objects. But we don't have that push to prod yet, so we're going to use the other option. In our event view, we have an event destructure. So destructure is a very fancy word. If you think about building something, you're like taking each brick and putting it together, each Lego brick. Now you're like structuring this thing together. Destructuring is kind of the opposite. It's like taking something out of it. I've got this complex, like all this different data, and I really just need like one piece of it. So can I destructure out that one piece of data? And this is a JavaScript term. It's used in some other languages, but it's mainly used in JavaScript. And so that's actually what's happening under the hood. But we're going to change this so that the language is a little more broad. Think of it as like getting a value from an object. I have this object. It's got all kinds of, let's say I have a bicycle, right? And it's red, and I can ride it, and it goes fast. All I need to know is the color of the bicycle. I don't even need to know anything about it. Could I just like destructure the bicycle so that I could just get red? That's kind of what we're doing. It's a little abstract, but it helps that there's like a visual sort of here, which is if I plug in my event with my input event, and things coming in are called events, and they have this kind of blue node. If I plug this into my destructure, I can break it out and get all of the different values that are inside of that event. Cool. I only need one. I just need this content. I'm going to plug that into my outputs. And let me save. And testing. And there you go. I sent in an input. It went to the event destructure. It broke it all out, but I only needed one piece of it, this content. And then it sent that back to the output. Not too bad, right? And anything I type in here is just going to respond. So this is one of the scariest nodes and scariest pieces. We're working to simplify this. We'll probably make this like an advanced thing so you don't see all this stuff unless you like press another button or something. If you have any feedback on how we can make it simpler, we're definitely open. But once you've gotten through this and you understand this concept, actually most things are quite a bit easier after that. You've gotten the input, you've broken out what you needed, and now you can do stuff with it. So let's just make a simple chatbot. There's a lot we could do. We could do memory, we could do judgment, we could do reflection, we could do reasoning. We could do so much, and we can do all of that with Magick, and we will. That's what the next weeks are going to be about. But we need to start really, really simple. We just need, I just want something like, I have a question, can you help me? And it actually does, right? I just want the basic chat GPT experience. Let's just start there. So one note is that if you wanted to, you can import a spell. And if you feel confident, the spells that we're using are on the Academy. And specifically, if you go to spells, you'll see that there's 2 spells here. There's Greybeard, who's a pirate we made, and there's Simple Chat. And if you go here and you press this little download button, you can download the spell. And then you can go and you can import it. But we're going to build, that's one way to do it. We're just going to build it from scratch for now. So I even though it says Discord input, I can also play test it here. This is great for testing any of my inputs. So I'll leave it a Discord input. I destructure the input. I get the content. Now I need to do some sort of chat. I need a completion. So everything that we did in the sandbox earlier in OpenAI, now I need to do that here. Okay. So I right click and I go down to the text view. And inside of in the text nodes, and we have a lot of different text nodes, but the one that we're looking for is the generate text. And this is our generic text generator. You can see here that we have a lot of different models. DaVinci 3.5, we're going to use Turbo. And when you use Turbo, you'll see that it changes to a chat completion interface. That means it has the system directive that we had. You are an assistant, help the user from the OpenAI sandbox, and it has conversation. And that conversation can be our history. We're not going to do that today. We're going to do that next time when we do events. But we can recall all of the conversation that this agent has had with that user, drive it into here, and then we can have a short-term memory done this way using events in the conversation input. And then we also have the input. So let's fire this up. First, I'll do the execution flow. The input hits the destructure. The destructure goes to the generate, and the generate goes to the output. Then I'll do the content. The content is going to go into the input. Let me save and refresh. It's another strange bug. Then the last thing is I need the system directive. So if I want to set the system directive, I need to have an input. The way to add an input is I need a text variable. A variable, the word means anything, can be anything, right? It can change. So when we talk about variables in code and everything, what we're talking about is like a block of data that can change. It could be a number, and you could have different, a number X, and sometimes it's 0, sometimes it's 10. In this case, we're using a text variable. A text variable is going to, well, I'll make one. Let us type in text here, right, and save it. And this text variable can then we can send whatever's here on into other nodes. So in this case, I'm going to say you are a scallywag pirate. Respond to the user in a pirate voice. Also, you have a terrible memory and can't for the life of you remember the user's name, even if they tell you. I mean, I can't get that wrong, right? We don't have memory, so let's just kind of lean into it, the story. And then we'll send this text variable out as our system directive input. Finally, now that we've done all of this, we have to return the result to our outputs. And that's it. I mean, that's a very, very basic ChatGPT kind of thing. The one thing to make this truly ChatGPT would be to add events plug it into the conversation, and then have that kind of conversation recall loops that feel seamless. We're going to go into that next week. Let's try it. Hello there. It did work. Let me refresh. Make sure everything's good. Hello there. I feel like something is missing here. I missed a key step. I'm sure I did. Oh my God. We should have done this a long time ago. One thing that you're going to run into is, well, you need your OpenAI key here too. I can't, my completion is failing. We have a new push that it'll error when I do that. But the reason that it's failing is because my OpenAI key is empty. So one thing to critically make sure, even I who wrote much of this code, definitely overlook occasionally, is that you need to paste your API key into the settings. And we actually have a little pop-up that warns you, so it should be pretty easy to get over there. But make sure that you have your OpenAI key here. And if you're not getting a completion, it might be because your API key is wrong, or you've run out of credits, or it's not typed in at all. But this is a frequent source of issues and something to look at. So I'm going to go to OpenAI, and I'm going to let's see. I have to I'm going to go create a new API key really quick for myself. To get to the API keys view, well, I'll show you. I don't think there's anything particularly sensitive here. The API keys view is here. Oops. At platform.openai.com/account/API keys. We also give you the link right here in the settings, so you can get right to it. You're going to click on the create new API key, paste that somewhere because it will never show it to you again, and you're going to have to delete your API key and get a new one if you forget. And then I will take that and paste it here. Control V, that's it. And then when I go back to my spell, hey there. Ahoy, matey. Welcome aboard me ship. I'm looking for provisions for my next journey. Shall we trade? Welcome aboard me ship. I'd be happy to trade you for provisions. So there's only one problem with this, which is that he doesn't actually remember the last thing I said. We'll approach that in the next one. That will take a little bit more time. But he does respond as a pirate. I mean, this is a complete little thing. So that will be part 2, right? We did it. We made a bot. We made a simple chat bot. But I do want to show you how to get this onto Discord. So we're going to take a 2-minute break. Everybody can catch up. Well, let's see. Maybe I'll show you a little bit of setup first, and then we can take a break so that you can kind of get set up, and then we can continue into the next part. Let me go to my syllabus really quick. One of these. There's quite a lot of windows now. Okay, so I've given all of the links on the Academy overview for the links that you'll need. You're going to need to go to the Discord developer portal, and you're going to need to create an application. Now, first, you're here, so you already have a Discord. But if for some reason you don't have a Discord account, or you want to create a separate one for this, for a server, bot development, you're going to need to register for Discord. The second thing you're going to need to do is when you want to test your bot, you're going to need to have them in a test server. And the way to do that is just to create your own Discord server and then invite them. I'm gonna leave that as an exercise to the reader. If you really want to know how to do that, you can go and say create a Discord server, and you'll see there's a whole step-by-step guide. Discord themselves has a plus and a tutorial on how to do this. You're gonna need your own server. You're the only person in it. You're the admin. It makes things a lot easier for troubleshooting. we all have our own private servers for developing our own bots before we bring them into public. This is what I'd like you to set up. We're going to go and create a new Discord application. Oh, I have to log in. I don't know. I'll figure that out in a second. We'll take a break and I'll do a login. But you're going to have to go go to the Discord developer portal, and you're going to create a new application. There is a great link so we use discord.js under the hood. That is the library for Discord that we use. And they have a great tutorial here on setting up your bot. So you go to the Discord developer portal, you create a new bot, you go and you set up, add a bot. And then down here in the bot, you're going to get the token. You see this reset token button or generate token. You are going to grab that token, never give that token to anybody. That is the token that gets your bot to connect to Magick. And a token looks like this, some kind of random number. And that's it. Let's take a quick break. If you could go and make a test bot, name it whatever you'd like, and also make a Discord server, then we can get into the next parts. If you don't, you can do it while we go, but this is just a little bit of preliminary since it will probably take a couple of minutes. I will take a 1-minute break and grab a drink of water and log in with with my Discord, and then we can actually do a proper walkthrough of that, setting up the bot, setting up the agent, and bringing it to Discord. And I will also be reviewing. If anybody has any questions, please leave them in the chat, and we'll go over them before we get into the next phase. Okay, I've gotten into my Discord developer portal. We're back. I'm going to pull this over here, and then we can go through and make a new application together. So first things first, if you put your OpenAI API keys into Magick, they are stored. Well, you should know that when they are running in your local IDE and you're just testing, that is stored locally. That is not shared with Magick server or pushed anywhere, but it is pushed out with your request to the completion, right? So if we're calling OpenAI, we do need to pass your API key through, but we don't save that or record that anywhere. However, if you're creating an agent, that agent does need to have persistence. It needs to have the API keys there and set up. They are stored securely. Nobody else should be able to see them. but you will be putting your API keys onto a Magick agent. You can, of course, run Magick locally. It's open source. You can do whatever you want. But if you're using the cloud, that's how it is for now. In the future, we will be providing Magick API keys and wrapping all of the different providers so that you don't have to worry about any of that. But for now, this is how we can deliver this quickly and let people choose their providers with no additional cost. So if you have any feedback on that, please definitely let me know. Let's see if there's any other questions. I'll get into the Discord thing and definitely provide any feedback. Okay, so we're here at discord.com/developers/applications. I believe if you start in discord.com/developers, it just brings you here if you're logged in. Once you're logged in, you can select I already have a bunch, obviously. We've made a few agents, but let's say I'm probably going to make a new one. And I'll just make testbot. And I'm going to agree, and I'll just keep it on my team. Now I have testbot, and I can give him a description and all this stuff. But what I really need is the token. Well, there's a couple things I need. I need the permissions as well. So we will start with, if we go to the bot, we're going to add bot. Yes, let's add a bot. And I will type in my 2FA. Cool. Now I have a bot. And you can see I can view the token. Once it's copied, if I come back here, it's going to be a reset. And from there, if I press reset, it will show me, I'll have to type it in and it'll give me the new code. But I did copy the code, and there it is. I'm not going to, this is a test bot. We're going to delete this after. So this token is already cooked. I would drop it somewhere, but we'll leave it there for now. I do need some intents. These are very critical. You don't need the OAuth 2 code grant because we're not doing that flow, but you do need the gateway intents. Specifically, you need the presence intent and the message content. And let's just have the server members intent too so that we can see who's there. So you need all three of these intents for this to work. And that is the setup for your bot as far as these are the permissions, which are called intents, and that is the token. So you can also see testbot 0613. This is my bot. Now I want to invite this bot to my server. Let's see. So I will go back to my curriculum. And I have a nice handy link here, which, I wish it didn't really do it quite right. Let's see if I can fix this. Let's see. A little quick fix on the fly. So I have this link here that lets me invite the bot to my server. In theory. Copy that. And I go here to this link. Okay, well, a little bit of context. There is a guide here at discord.js for how to invite the bot. And you can see that there's a bot invite link. There's a URL here. We basically copy this and we put our client ID in. But I've also provided in our Magick Academy. Oh, I just got rid of it, didn't I? The actual just direct link so you can get there. So let me just go grab that again. It is this one. Copy link. Now I need to get the client ID for my bot. Typically with a bot, if you see a cool bot you like, you click on the bot and then you invite it to your server. But if you've never invited the bot to any servers, there's no interface to do this. So you have to invite the bot programmatically with this URL to your first server. So I will go to my developer portal again, and I'm going to get, I need the bot ID, which will be, I need the application ID. So I go to general information of testbot, and I have this application ID here. And in that link, I replace the client ID with the application ID. I think that's right. I know it's a little convoluted, but basically client ID equals whatever that app ID is in that URL I provided. And then I enter that. And now you can see an external application testbot wants to access your Discord account. And what it wants to do is it wants to be added to a server. I have all these servers that I can add it to, and I can add it to M3 Research is one of my bot test servers. And I press authorize and verify that I'm not a bot. And now the bot is added to my server. How do I verify that? Oh, I can go over Discord. I can click on M3 Research, and I'll just drag this over here. You can see testbot is here. There is testbot, but testbot's not running. Testbot's just the bot that has is now in the server. I actually still have to make an agent that sits here and listens to messages and responds. So that'll kind of be the last part. We've got the bot on the server. We've set the bot up. I did not remember to keep my token, so I'm going to reset the bot token. Now we got to start the agent, and that means we need this token. So 369. I get my token, and now I'm going to go back to Magick, which is here. Okay, I have this agent. It's all running. I want to make, I have a spell. Now I want to assign the spell to an agent, get it to run on Discord. Go to agents window. I already have an agent, right? And I'll call this week 1 agent. And I can select the root spell, will be week 1 simple graph. It's one I just made. And I'm going to enable Discord. And, this is a sneaky one. We need to give some more indication of this, but there's a top right here that this is the actual enable agent right here. In the Discord, I'm going to paste that API key and save. And now my agent is alive. If I go back here, you can see testbot is running. I say that's it, it's done. But I have to do one more step, which is I don't have an OpenAI key on my agent, so the agent will probably fail. So once again, go to OpenAI, my API keys, create a new key, and I will paste this in to the OpenAI key here and update. And now I have a bot here. Now this is all very alpha, so who knows if it'll work, but it should work from this point. Okay, so there is an error, but it told me what the error is. Cannot read properties of undefined reading results. Now I have it on good authority that we fixed this, and this is an issue with this current build. Let me make sure that's true. I think the way to solve that for now is I'll make sure this goes back out to Discord text. Let me just try that one more time. If I change my spell, then I will have to go back to my agent and I'll have to update the agent, because I could have spells on different agents. I don't necessarily want to change the agent while I'm messing with my spell. You wouldn't want to be changing something while you're doing it. So I actually have to go back here and I have to update my agent and say, hey, you should actually restart. And then I can go back. Now there might still be an issue, but at least later today you should. Yeah, so we still have some sort of issue. We'll have to resolve in the cloud. But I know that that's already fixed. We just have to push it. So if you try this later today, it should absolutely work. And you should be able to chat with your bot inside of Discord. Now, let's see. I have Graybeard running. I wonder if he's the same. Yeah. Okay. We're going to handle that real quick and fix it. But there you go. You have a bot in Discord. You can chat with your bot. And that's it. Now, I think there's a lot there. So we'll probably do kind of a setup and revisit next week on that part before we start. But I hope that kind of gets you sort of started with everything. And then we can, we'll wrap it up. So I believe that's it for my lecture. I think we can take a little bit of time for any questions that. I get it. I see. It's actually my bad. I'm getting input that we should just set it to default inputs. Cool. Let me just do that really quick. Yeah, so I just have to do a default inputs for now, and that should work. That's the bug. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, otherwise, thank you so much for being here and doing this with us. And we're gonna keep going. You know, this is gonna get a lot more complex, and we're gonna kind of cover everything until we're at a full AGI system, basically, hopefully in the next couple of months. So yeah, that's it. Any questions for anybody? Is REST API for other possible API keys. So the REST API gives you an API key, and the REST API is if you wanted to use Magick for other apps. So you could like have a front end built in Vercel that uses Magick, you know, and connects to that as like an interface. And let me just.
And for clarity on the OpenAI key, so how does it work when you put it in the settings window on the sidebar, but do you need to put a new key in it for different scenarios? Does that make sense?
The OpenAI key that is in your settings window never leaves your settings window, except it does go out with the request. So this is stored in your local storage of your browser, and this is just for doing previews. This only runs for the code generation and for the playtest preview here. When you make an agent, you can use separate API keys. One thing is that OpenAI has a very limited cost threshold that you can spend until you've used it a lot. So you might need an API key per agent just to like, you know, get them to run without running out of
yeah, that just wasn't clear to me in the sense of it, because it was like, oh, this is a different one for a different agent.
That makes absolutely. I should be more clear about that. That the settings one is for the IDE preview, and that the agent has its own API key. And you know, if your agent gets banned, it doesn't take down everything else you made or something like that. Any other questions? I will
drag a question in the chat.
Cool. Do you want to read it to me?
Yeah, basically, is there a place where we can learn more about the different kinds of nodes that are available? Because there's like a lot of nodes, but it's not clear what they do.
There are a lot of nodes, and there will be more. We do have documentation on the nodes, but it's pretty brief. We're going to be focusing on supporting the nodes that we showed you, as well as a few more, and then adding full support as we teach how the nodes work and what they do. We'll be supporting those in more depth. We do have Magick documentation at academy.magick.ml.com. All of the core concepts that we discussed today, nodes, agents, embedding, there's a lot more we didn't discuss very intentionally, is covered here in this documentation. If you click on nodes, all of the nodes are briefly covered here. However, this documentation is sorely lacking. If you have any desire to contribute, adding to this part, especially what the nodes do, is the critical part. You can see I can click on, say, there's probably even, this is not terribly great, but I could click on like inputs to object, and it just shows me some info, but it's not very specific. So this is definitely still an area that we're working a lot on. And we'll be posting like screenshots and tutorials of and how each of the nodes works, what the inputs are and stuff. It's just not quite ready yet.
There's another question that says, is this the same model as Graybeard? Because it sounds like it. Lots of laughs.
Yes, it is the same model as Gray. Well, I also specifically, if you said, hey, you're a scallywag pirate. Yeah. Yeah. GPT 3.5.
Hey, Moon, can you kind of maybe take a step back also and kind of share, once these questions are done, sort of Magick as a whole and all the sort of the vision of it and the pieces that we're focused on, so just people have perspective on what this is overall?
Sure. At the very core of it, it's a I've been calling it prompt plumbing. I should come up with a better one. It's a way of moving data, through a system. But when you think of what we are data moving through systems, but we have these kind of interesting looping properties. Persistence. The last moment and this moment feel like they went from one to the next. And so a lot of what we're trying to do in Magick is create this kinds of temporal persistence of like an agent remembers who you are, when you spoke to them, what you spoke to them about. And you can do a lot of non-agentic things with Magick, but where it really shines is in creating systems that kind of run themselves and can say like have a loop. And eventually sort of, I'd like to say we're going towards something that will be very AGI-like. I mean, the reason why I'm here building this and not anywhere else is because I really think that this is the building blocks for AGI. And the reason I believe that is because this spell, I can just go and export it. Soon I'll be able to share it. I'll be able to even sell it if I wanted to. But that ability to make a small solution to something and then share it with somebody else and then embed it within a greater solution will allow us to build very, very complex systems. So one thing I'll show you guys, in our IO, we have a spell node. And what the spell node does is it lets me call a different spell. So I can call spells from within spells. So in this week 1 simple graph spell, I could call this other spell. And that allows me to build spells for all kinds of cognition, like judgment, reflection, criticism, action, reaction, factual summary and analysis of large bodies of text just for the core key information that it's trying to keep. I mean, there's so much that we can do here. And that all helps us to build very like human-like interfaces, which we can interact with naturally, and that can do quite a lot more than we would just do by programming it. So that's my dream here, is that we are here to build AGI, truly generally intelligent systems. The other thing I want to point out, this graph, this is just data too. Let's see what a graph looks like. I'm just going to open it with code. So this whole visual graph here is just JSON, and the JSON is ordered. I'd like to format it. Let me see. Let's see if I can format. Format document with. Yeah. So I formatted the JSON. The JSON is ordered. What that means is that we can like save this to GitHub. We can update this. We can share these. All of the information inside of here is this, right? It's just turned into description. And the great thing about this is we can generate it with AI. So once we have, basically, if all of us here in this call make a couple of graphs that do a couple of things, and we do a really good job of commenting them and describing their flow and what they do, we will be able to generate new graphs for new solutions on the fly dynamically. And so you can imagine if I could create all of this, just as like the AI could just create it and see if it works, run through, and if it does an error, like save it to its skill list. This is how we can build like recursively self-improving systems. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you can see how this could go from being something very simple and visual to being very advanced very quickly. Obviously, there's a lot more nodes we'll cover, a lot of flow control, a lot of event stuff, documents, embeddings, but we'll get into that next week. Anyway, thank you guys so much. I think we've covered it, and that's it. I'll see you next week.